everything else. But I wanted to ask you, I don't know what Staffy's trying to sort his computer out. So I wanted to ask you, you were in the group chat earlier on today. I need to ask you about this. You were basically going in. I just joined in with a little bit of fun between you and Neeks doing the whole, what do you mean you people? The way you man were going at it was making me laugh. I couldn't read everything because I was with my son. I was busy. But essentially what I read from you was, don't you dare mention Saka's name in comparison to Esteval, as though Esteval is clear of him, right? And I was like, oh, where is this come? It was like you were almost disgusted at the idea that Saka was being compared to Esteval. Surely you've got to be exaggerating a little bit there.
Bro, I just don't really see why you would compare someone like Esteval with a Saka, because I think they're different. I think they're different type of players, bro. I look at Saka more like the Salahs. You know what I mean? Whereas I look at Esteval as more Joga Bonito. I don't look at Saka as Joga Bonito. So I wouldn't compare them. I wouldn't compare them, bro. You know, I've seen there's a lot of debates right now about who's better. I don't know if you've seen DR Sports. They put Rom's tweet up. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I haven't seen that, but I saw Rom's tweet.
Yeah, they've put that up. And listen, people are going to be rattled by it, but you already know what I think of Saka, Terry. Like, you know what I think of the guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
the reason why, though, the reason why people are going to compare, I get you see them as different types of players. You know, one's Joga Bonito, one's more Salah, but they essentially play the same position. They've both been playing on the ride white. So for me, why can't I say it wide right? I'm saying white on the wide right. So people are going to have those conversations. And in fairness, this conversation this week is because of Rom's tweet. We shared it on.
I was on the phone to. I think I was on the phone to him when he said he's going to tweet it, or like was messaging each other at the time.
Yeah,
it went viral.
I shared it. I shared it on a stream. I think we shared it on the Six-Sided last night. DR Sports have put it out, so it's created a conversation. And you said something that was so interesting in the group. Now, listen, I think it's fair to say Esteval's got a high ceiling because he's got a greater level of technical ability. Arsenal fans will reject it, but I think it's a fair assessment. What I will say is that Esteval hasn't proven himself to be able to consistently perform in the best league in the world and the Champions League yet. And until he does that, you can say that he's going to be better, but until he actually delivers, it's a little pie in the sky. But I wanted to pull on something you said about Saka not being consistent and you need to see more from him. And I want to ask you a question, really, and I want to get down to what is it still that you keep talking about this consistency from Saka. Quantify that. What does him being consistent look like? How would you word that?
Go back to the performances when, you know, he was putting out before he got injured, bro. I thought Saka was very good. I think for me, the way he was playing, he was probably going to have his best season as an Arsenal player. I reckon he would have probably beaten his best GA, played in the Prem as well. I thought he was fantastic before he got injured, bro. You know, and then he came back and, you know, he wasn't looking great. Obviously, he was injured and whatnot. It's not easy to come back, rush back even from the injury that he had, you know, but that's the level that I'm talking about, Terry. So when Neeks was like, oh, he's consistent week in, week out, that's where I have to come back and push back a little bit and say, bro, he's not though. He's not consistent week in, week out. He might be steady week in, week out, but to say he's consistently good, that's where our standards are different. Because my standard of consistent is clearly different to his. You know what I mean? Clearly this season, right? It's not. Okay. I've heard many Arsenal fans this season, including people I'm in group chats with, because I'm in group chats with a lot of Arsenal fans. Well, they've not been overly, you know, impressed with Saka's performances this year. Like, yes, he played well against Fulham, and you know, you can think of maybe the odd Champions League game, but he hasn't been great. You know what I'm saying? And I've always said to you, like, this in terms of the GNA, I can't fault Saka in terms of the GNA. Yes, he's been on the drought recently, and a lot of these Arsenal fans won't talk about it because when he came to Parma, they had a lot of energy. But now with Saka, they don't want to fucking talk about what is it? I'm seeing one open goal, one open play goal in the last like nearly 30 games in the Prem or something like that. I think the last one he scored was against Fulham, right? He's been on a massive drought. You know what I'm saying, bro? But in terms of his overall performances, I haven't been overly impressed. I think what's really impressed me about Arsenal so far is how solid they are, bro. I'm looking at Gabriel. I'm looking at Zubimendi. Even Rice playing in that pivot has been way more influential, way more consistent than Saka. So it's just, for me, I feel like a lot of people overrate this guy, man. And Leaks was a prime example today. Oh, he's consistent week in, week out. I don't agree with that, bro. I don't agree with that, man. I don't.
So look, it's interesting that you say that. He hasn't scored a great deal of goals in his last sort of 10 to 20 matches. That is absolutely right. A lot of those 10 to 20 matches I've been getting over a hamstring injury, which if anyone knows anything about sport, the level of hamstring tear that he had, it's a big procedure, and there's a big recovery time that comes with it. But overall, I think Bukayo Saka has most certainly been one of the most consistent players in an Arsenal shirt for many a year. And
but no one's disagreed about the level of GNA he's brought to the team. But I've always said to you, Terry, about the individual performances, and that's why for me, when you're asking me what do I want to see, I've literally given you tangible evidence of before he got injured,
so this is what I wanted to ask you. So, and this isn't a dig at you, and it isn't about Saka specifically. I'm seeing a lot of this now in the football conversation. I need to see consistent performances without GNA. Okay, but what does that look like? Let's get into granular detail. What does that look like?
About this before?
Because for me, there has to be data that backs this up. And do you know why there's got to be data for me? I was speaking to a friend of mine today who's a football scout. Not today, that's a lie, 2 days ago. And I said, do you use, what's it like now? Is it eyes or is it stats? He went, it's everything. It's your eye test. Stats have got, when you're talking to football clubs that are taking on a young kid right through to a pro player, yes, you can give your eye test. And the more gems you found, the more you get trusted. But the stats have to back the eye test. They also want as deep a background check as you can get. And what a lot of these scouts are doing these days, they're doing multiple things. Some of these scouts, especially when they're looking at a talent that might cost a club £150 million over the course of a contract.
Yeah,
they are going out in the local towns. They're going to bars, nightclubs. Is this person around? Do they do this? They find out who their friends are. They do investigations into their Facebook. They sit in the crowd with fans and ask questions. Oh, what do you guys hear about this guy and all this? So this is scout's job. So I think as football fans, I'm not saying we should go to that level. I'm not saying me and you should go in a manner that Saka hangs around and try and find out what he does at the weekend, where he eats, right? I think that's a bit excessive. But I think we have to start moving away as fans from just the eye test and what I see. And we've got to start quantifying that. And I want to give you a reason. What would you consider Eden Hazard as a winger in the league? Would you consider him as a benchmark or an exception?
Bro, definitely benchmark, bro.
So if you're let me re-ask that question, because I don't want you to feel misled. Benchmark is good standard. Exception is if you're at that level, you're one of the best in the world.
I mean, listen, Hazard was one of the best at facilitating, one of the best at making goals out of nothing, right? Obviously, Terry, you're not gonna get players that are playing at that level, because for me, he's an all-timer. Hazard is obviously an all-timer. But you can still put up a similar level of impact in your performances, bro. I've seen Saka do it. Like I said, if you go check some of the metrics,
I understand.
If you go check some of the metrics from last season, I think Saka was up there for big chances created in open play. He was up there for chances created. He was up there for GNA. He was up there for so many different things.
So it's great.
And if you remember, Terry, hold on. If you go back a little bit, if you remember the conversations we had last year, I was literally saying Saka right now is performing better than Cole Palmer, right? And Cole Palmer is the Chelsea player.
But I think this all makes sense, because David here says in the comments, he said somewhere, if Saka played for United and got 3 in 20, he would not get away with it. The media wouldn't allow it. Now, right now, no. But again, I mean, you wouldn't allow it, David. Forget the mainstream media. You would be the one attacking him and talking about how Darwin Núñez or Anthony was better. That would be you, David. But if he had been as good for Man United as he's been for Arsenal over the last 5 years, and then had a bad injury and hadn't scored as many goals in the recovery period after that, there'd be more leeway. The same as Bruno Fernandes gets nowhere near as much stick. He does from people that hate him. He gets nowhere near as much stick for not scoring goals as midfielders have never scored goals for us or have always been flops. There's credit in the bank. But the reason why I use Eden Hazard as an example, if we go back to the except, I look at Eden Hazard as an exception. I wouldn't use Eden Hazard as the benchmark to go, I'm going to assess everybody against him because he's so good.
I think you can look at the fundamentals of
fundamentals.
away from DNA, bro.
Again, no, we have to look at this though, because this is why numbers matter. Because the people that do the professional scouting to buy players don't just look at how someone looks aesthetically on the eye. They don't just look at the fundamentals, because the first touch might be amazing. The dribbling, the close, it might be like the ball stuck to their foot like Velcro. But if the final ball is often too bad or over hit, if the shooting's awful, they're not getting picked up, typically speaking, by the best clubs in the world. At the same time, they're looking at everything. And numbers matter. And the reason why I don't see Hazard as a benchmark is I think he's so good. If you're judging everybody against him, most players are going to come out, you're going to, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. And you may never see a winger at Chelsea ever again as good as Eden Hazard, because he was that good. He's one of the greatest you've ever had, one of the greatest the Prem's ever had, facts. But then I started looking to go, well, what did the greatest deliver in terms of efficiency as a professional football player? For instance, he used to score in the Premier League, this is 0.35 goals per game. So it's essentially a goal every 3 games. He would assist 0.2 times, an assist every 5 games. He would create around 2.5 on average chances per game. So every 2 matches, it's 5 chances, which is a good level. He would do about an average around 3. He would complete around 3 dribbles per game. His dribble success rate, so think about how good he was, the fundamentals, everything, 63% of the dribbles that he attempted in the Premier League, he delivered. Right. And many would say he's one of the greatest dribblers that the Premier League's ever seen. Crossing accuracy, consistently between 18 to 20%, okay? And then passing accuracy, around 84%, flat out consistent. So with all the fundamentals, with all the ability that he's got, over a 7-year period, he was scoring 1 in 3, assisting 1 in 5, creating at least 2 to 3 chances per game. 63% of his dribbles was coming off. So then what I did is I went and looked at it for Saka. So go, right, I completely agree that you could look at Saka and I could look at Saka and we see something different with the fundamentals and the eye test in terms of what we like, the aesthetic element. I think it's key. But what I then think we then ignore is the efficiency. So he scores less goals per game than Eden Hazard. But remember, Eden Hazard is the exception. He's looked at as one of the greatest ever. So he's currently averaging 0.27 goals per game. So there is a difference in there. He's assisting. It's ever so slightly more, 0.23 rather than 0.22. It's the same. In terms of chances created per game, Eden Hazard was creating more at 2.5, where Saka's around 2. So it's slightly less creation, but still high. Dribble succession rate is so interesting because it's not as good as Eden Hazard. You know it isn't as good as Eden Hazard's, but it's 57%. It's 57% of the dribbles that he attempts, he completes. The next area is the one area that he excels in over Eden Hazard, and she's crossing. His crossing accuracy is a whopping 28 to 30% of the time he finds a man from a cross. Passing accuracy is the same. Now listen, on legacy, right now, Eden Hazard strips into pieces. I'm not even going to argue that. And the reason why I think we've got to start in these arguments as football fans, and I'm not saying we've got to agree on this today, is we've got to start quantifying what we mean when we say X isn't consistent. Like, if that is the level of an Eden Hazard, who you would probably call a great and consistent player, if Saka is delivering similar efficiencies in the game, irrespective of our own preferences, we can't deny that he isn't a consistent player. When you look at one of the greatest to ever do it, Saka's outputs in multiple areas that are important for a winger, dribbling, crossing, passing, chance creation, goal scoring. In most of them, he's behind Eden Hazard, which I'm not surprised by because of how great Hazard was. But you're talking about a player that is only marginally behind him in these areas. So for me to hear people say he's not consistent, I look at it and go, I think it's more this. You just don't like Saka for multiple reasons. He's an Arsenal player. He doesn't do it for you aesthetically. But in terms of someone that is efficient as a pro footballer, I just see someone that outside of the period of his injuries, I look at his last few games for me. If I look at his matches, I think of the Fulham game. If you go back and watch Atletico Madrid, what he was doing to their fullback all game was almost illegal. I thought he played very well against Palace. I thought he was very good against Brighton. He was very good for England in the last internationals, and I feel like we're getting that Bukayo Saka back. But I look at his whole career. By the way, the first couple of years of his career, he was playing fullback. He weren't even playing as an attacker. And I bet if you run the numbers from Saka from when he's purely played as a winger, I bet he's even a little bit closer with some of these creation numbers and goal numbers. But I just sort of look at it and I don't get why Saka gets called out so much when his numbers are almost as consistent as one of the greatest ever wingers in Premier League history.
But that's the thing though, Terry. You won't be able to find any receipts anywhere of me saying Saka's not effective. Saka's not got good end products. When people say Doku's better than Saka, like when Perez, remember Perez said it, right? And I was like, bro, Doku's not better than Saka. He might be more direct than Saka, but Saka's a better player because he's more effective. In the final third, you can trust Saka to be more effective and create more. He's got better end products, right? But for me, let me just compare Saka to Sanchez. If I'm picking between Alexis Sanchez and Saka, it's not even, I'm not even debating who I think is a better player. I'm not even debating who I think would be better for the team. I'm not even debating who is more influential. That's the level that I'm talking about, right? So just because Saka's one of the best right wingers, one of the most effective wingers in today's game, that doesn't mean that I'm now going to drop my standards and start overrating him and Saka this and Saka that. Because I'm seeing people in the chat crying. One guy, I think Rob, I think his name's Rob, saying, "Oh, I've had my pants pulled down here." I haven't had my pants pulled down here because I literally said it to you in the group chat as well. I can respect the Sakas. I can respect the Salahs for their team. But it doesn't mean that it's my cup of tea, right? When Sanchez was playing, bro, he was an op. But I loved watching him play, right? Most of the games I'll be tuning in to specifically watch.